International Responsible Business Conduct Agreements, IRBC agreements, will support companies with the practical implementation of the OECD guidelines. But not only that, it will also provide a safe space and a trusted environment for cooperation between companies, unions, governments, and NGOs to explore what and how responsible business conduct within a sector should look like. My name is Fleur Meerman, and on behalf of the Sociaal-Economic Council of the Netherlands, the SER, I would like to welcome you to the side session of the OECD Forum on Due Diligence in the Garment and Footwear sector. In this session, we will discuss how negotiated international RBC sector agreements support due diligence. The SER has over 7 years of experience in facilitating and implementing negotiated sector agreements in a range of sectors, including that of the garment and footwear sector. Negotiated sector agreements are partnerships between business, trade unions, governments, unions, and NGOs to work to identify and prevent abuses like exploitation, child labor, and environmental damage. These agreements are voluntary, but not without obligations for companies. Top management of companies commit themselves and their companies towards achieving the commitments of the agreements. Additionally, there's an independent complaints and grievance mechanism that serves as an accountability mechanism for companies to actually act on their pre-negotiated commitments. Negotiated sector agreements contributed to the successful implementation of due diligence at Dutch companies. But to ensure more impact in global supply chains and in addressing key environmental and social risks, sectoral collaboration needs to be encouraged and scaled up. As such, the SER is exploring if international collaboration is possible in the garment and footwear sector through a negotiated sector agreement. In this session, we will share lessons from 6 years of experience in implementing the agreement on garments and textiles, which ended last year. We invited 3 speakers of different stakeholders today to dive deeper in the key success factors of working on these agreements. Please allow me to introduce Marieke Dolaert. Marieke is a responsible production chain manager at HEMA, a European private label retailer in both food and non-food. Yep. Ruben Korevaar. Ruben is a policy officer at FNV Mondiaal and a union active in over 80 countries. Not only a Dutch union, but active all over. And last but not least, and with us online, Tamer Hoek. Tamer is Senior Policy Director Sustainable Fashion at Solidaridad. And all of you have been involved with the Dutch Agreement on Sustainable Garments and Textiles. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Tamer, nice to see you online as well. I would actually like to start with you, Ruben. Before we talk about the sector agreements, could you introduce yourself and introduce us what the role of FNV was within the agreements?
Thank you so much for the invitation. Nice being up here on this important topic. I think global business, is expanding, and I think because of incidents like Rana Plaza in Bangladesh in 2013, we also felt that we have a responsibility downstream as well. I think that shocked the world quite a bit, and we have been partnering with a lot of trade unions all around the world, and it really helped also to address workers' rights issues in the debate today. And I think the initiative up here in the Dutch sector was, we embraced it, I think, also as a trade union. We work from an international solidarity principle as well to support not only in the Netherlands but everywhere workers worldwide to improve working conditions and really ensure decent working conditions. So we have been from the very beginning of, as a partner on board to negotiate the content of the agreement and be involved in its implementation.
Great. So you're actually representing the voice of affected workers in this agreement.
We do. We represent millions of workers worldwide.
Yeah. Okay. So that has been your perspective.
Quite a responsibility, yes.
And I think your experience on freedom of association and collective bargaining has been an important one as well.
I think when we started up here, I think for many of us, including myself, a lot of topics were quite at a policy level, so quite normative. And I think it's important now also to see how we can apply it to the working conditions in production countries like Vietnam or India, Pakistan, and really engage together with businesses as well, how we can really apply those OECD guidelines on human rights due diligence and address some of the mishaps in the sector as well.
All right, well, we will talk about that later on. I'd like to switch to Marieke, business. Ruben was already referring to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Could you please introduce yourself shortly and let us know why HEMA signed the agreement and what the role of HEMA was within the agreements?
Yes, I work at HEMA as a production chain, responsible production chain manager, I have to say. So my focus is mainly on the supply chains in the production countries and where our products are made. And then both human rights and environmental impact.
Okay.
We do this within the team, of course, but that's my focus. And as you mentioned, so 7 years ago, Rana Plaza, but also a lot of complex issues, I think, for companies and in the textile supply chains that felt very complex, maybe even a little bit far being in other countries, in production countries. So for us, what we realized is we really needed to cooperate with other brands, but also stakeholders, such as NGOs, but of course also the unions. To learn from each other, but also increase our leverage if we can. Yeah. To do the same things. Yeah. So that was a big drive for us to join this.
Increase leverage and cooperate with others in the sector.
An exchange of knowledge, of course. I mean, the unions, like Ruben, it has a lot of knowledge on freedom of association, for example. Yeah. Which we needed.
Yeah. Yeah, later on we also have some examples of that. Thank you so much. Tamer, could you please introduce yourself and let us know what the role of Solidaridad was within the agreements and what your organization contributed to the agreements?
Yeah, thanks, Ver. So hi everyone, my name is Tamer. I work for Solidaridad. I'm responsible for the international lobby and advocacy work we do within the fashion industry. For us, that is from I think from garments all the way up to the impact at cotton farming level. So Solidaridad has been involved in, I guess, the negotiations of the Dutch agreement from the start, but even I think before that. I think people who are engaged in the Dutch industry of fashion know that before there was even an agreement, there was already a collaboration between different parties in the fashion industry. So for Solidaridad, it's in our DNA to work together with different parties, different stakeholders in the supply chain, in the value chain of the fashion industry. So what we do is we bring different stakeholders together into collaborative projects, into innovative projects. And I think the Dutch agreement was, I think, a front-running initiative within the Dutch fashion industry. We wanted to contribute to that because I think we have gained lots of knowledge in the past on how you can set up these, I think, successful initiatives. On the other hand, we also wanted to expand our own, I think, our own leverage within the Dutch industry and support companies of our, I think, founding country, where our kind of founding base is in the Netherlands. I think what we have done is we are an organization that contributes to improving the livelihoods of farmers, workers, and miners. What we have done is we develop tools, trainings, other materials on different topics that are key to Solidaridad, like purchasing practices, living wage, living income, sustainable materials, transparency, cleaner production. On the one hand, to develop these tools so that brands can work on these topics on their own. On the other hand, for us to set up projects with them in producing countries to work on impact on the ground.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much, Tamer. And you've developed all these tools and initiatives, and maybe that's a good switch to go to Marieke. You already explained why you joined the agreement, but what did you really get out of it? And what Tamer just explained, what they wanted to bring, is that also what you got?
Yeah, I think so. For a large part, the tools and trainings that were provided by Solidaridad, but also the other partners, of course, in in the agreement. They really helped us to get a basic knowledge of very complex topics, but even some of the tools we even use today. We were able to join projects, for example, that would train us as already on sustainability experts, but also our colleagues, and but even our suppliers, which was very, of course, is where you need to work together and where the impact really is. So yes, there's definitely one of the larger things that we got out of it. And also, even, I think that 7 years ago, I mean, you mentioned it already, it was 7 years ago, so that's quite a while. Things have changed. I mean, we've learned a lot since then, but then it was really, I think what one of the best parts was that we were in one room together with the several brands and the stakeholders. And we're open and transparent on these issues, and also being more vulnerable, maybe even as a brand, saying, I have these issues. I mean, they are there. What can we do?
Yeah, so the environment was trusted enough to share that.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
Yeah, what was that, Ruben? Was that new or different, or did you experience previously? I mean, did you get information from brands that you didn't get before?
No, definitely. I only joined in 2017, so I think the agreement was already set. But what Marieke also addressed, it's about exchanging views as well.
Yeah.
I think as trade union, it's really about industrial relations. So, and there, especially along supply chains, you have to understand what's going on up there in Asia mainly. But also understanding what is driving business, but also then having a discussion, but how do you do your due diligence right now? And I think that's the in-depth journey you're taking together to question each other, having very tangible inside information. But that's only possible by, well, building up a relationship, getting trust as well, and really investing in the relationship and really thinking, okay, what's in it for both of us?
Yeah.
And I think that's very important as well. And I think as AGT, with support of the chair, I think we really contributed to a safe and constructive environment to really have some tangible topics brought to the table in which you have a discussion to improve on wages, on forced labor, and so on.
Yeah, and AGT is an agreement on garments and textiles, for those who don't know the abbreviation. Yeah, so and you both indicate it's been a longer term cooperation, so yeah, you really had the time maybe to invest in a relationship and to build on that. If I hear both of you.
No, yeah, definitely. It's I think in the agreement a lot of topics were addressed as a priority as well, and I think but Marieke also mentioned to come together as well, bring clear examples from companies' own supply chain, bring in also sometimes partner organizations from production countries up here.
Yeah.
Really helped also to have very concrete topics on the table as a starting point also, okay, is this the ideal situation? What would we like to change as well?
Yeah.
But what's being needed? So it's not only about the suppliers in Asia as well, but it's also about for businesses how to do their sourcing relationship with suppliers as well, looking into their own policies and practices. So yeah, and
it's a much broader.
It is.
It's not just a one-off, but it's more. You look at the full cycle. Maybe Tamer, this is a good time to move to you. I mean, in your opinion, how did the agreement help companies in meeting their due diligence obligations?
Good question, Fleur. So I think in general, the concept of due diligence is quite complex, and I think the agreement kind of set up this system where companies are being guided in the first steps of the due diligence cycle. So you do a proper kind of risk analysis, you set up a policy, and you make sure that you have the procedures in place to do a proper due diligence. So I guess without these kind of basic due diligence principles, it's very difficult to eventually work on impact in your supply chain. So I think the Secretariat did a tremendous job to kind of work through all these action plans that companies made and to give them a thorough assessment and gave advice on adjustments, and that helped eventually all the other parties, the trade unions, the NGOs, the sector associations, to set up trainings, tools, guidance, projects on the ground to reduce the risks that came out of the risk analysis. So I think in general, when we talk about due diligence, we think, oh, we do a risk analysis and then we work on the impact on the ground, but it's so much more. You need to kind of set up this system, and I think the Dutch agreement has really contributed to that.
Yeah, so it's really the interaction between the different parties and the continuous cycle. I hear you say it's not just doing one time a risk assessment, but what came out of the risk assessment of all these companies fed back into what you as unions and NGOs could contribute to companies, to Marieke, to kind of adjust the system in that sense. Marieke, if you, and we talk about the due diligence system, that was really a focus. If you think about what did that mean for HEMA? How did it change your way of working? If we talk about due diligence, because that was at the core of the agreement.
What did it change? Well, the level of transparency, I think, externally. So, of course, like Tamara's mentioned, we had to share a lot of information about our supply chains and the type of materials and everything that we used. To the Secretariat?
To the Secretariat, but you actually also went a step beyond that, right? So you had to give your production locations actually to the Secretariat and they would aggregate it, but HEMA chose to go one step beyond.
The factories are first tier suppliers online. First the Open Apparel Registry and now Open Supply Hub. Yeah, definitely. That was, I think that what happened there is that it became less of a problem, or maybe even
scary.
Exactly. Looking for the word. Less scary to publish that, and we realized that it actually not only served being transparent, but also having other stakeholders being able to see our factory and then link those factory to us if there would ever occur, if there was ever an issue
negative
that occurred.
impact. Yeah,
exactly. Just like Tamara is saying, you have this continuous contact. So it's not only about one issue or one event, but it's there online all the time. So that is one of the outcomes, definitely.
Yeah, so it's really step by step. The first step being transparent to the Secretariat, and then on an aggregated level share the information. Yeah. And then what we actually saw is that a lot of brands thought, hey, this is useful, and I can even be more transparent externally as well. Yeah. So that was one of the parts of due diligence. Are there other things that you say, okay, this is maybe how we change our way of working a bit if we talk about due diligence and how the agreement have facilitated that? Yeah,
I think that the framework itself is already a very practical sort of guidance to very complex issues. Like I mentioned before, it might seem far away and it might seem like something that you have no impact on, but the guidance itself already makes it more tangible.
And what guidance do you refer to?
The due diligence guidance.
From the OECD itself. Yeah.
And then, but you need your stakeholders and you need other brands. So you need this kind of what really helped. You need knowledge and you need a network.
Yeah.
So with that, there's nothing really you can do with that guidance. So that I think really brought the AGT to have that network, also local network, to help us then implement those guidelines. And for one of the examples, for example, is that we focused very much on workers' voice.
Yeah.
Starting or joining projects that were set up because of the AGT by union, for example, or by NGOs. Mm-hmm. So we started projects to really learn about what does workers' voice mean, and it involved grievance mechanisms. How do you set these up in the factory, outside of the factory? And that's one of the key things, I think, for us.
Yeah, so the network is very important. Ruben, if you can maybe add, like, what was one of the reasons for you, to join and wanting to be part of this agreement? Was that also the network, or?
Well, definitely. I mean, I personally always value a lifelong love for learning. So, and in order to make an impact and really live up to policy, you really have to start digging in your own business. That's for us working with working conditions at factory level, and try to bring them to the table. What I found very interesting is that there's a wide diversity of brands and businesses and retailers who joined the AGT, and I think the membership has been growing over the years as well.
Yeah.
And I think that showed the success, that it really helped to also the smaller companies as well, to really link to bigger companies like HEMA as well, to look in similar regions where they have the production going on, and addressing issues on forced labor. We commissioned a study on forced labor in China. That was a hot debate at the time, but looking back at it, it really helped also businesses sourcing in that region in China as well, to really go visiting their suppliers with a different point of view, and look into, for instance, outsourcing practices by their own supplier, and to adapt to it in a practical way, deal in it in a responsible way with respect for workers as well, but live up to the principles that are underlying the OECD guidelines.
Yeah. And did this cooperation also bring something in terms of insights that you got that you didn't get before?
I think what it brought me is and FNV is that you really have to listen very carefully also to where businesses are. I think as trade union we really work principle based. So the ILO conventions are really at the core of our work.
Yeah.
But it's the same as the OECD guidelines, and they're quite bulky and complex as well. So it's really listening very carefully. Okay, what are the priorities? I mean, for companies as well, where can they make the different impact? And for me, that was quite learning as well in every encounter with each and individual company as well, that there are specific underlying problems. It can be in the management, but it can be in the sourcing relationship, maybe also lack of eyes and ears on the ground as well.
Yeah.
So that really helped also to go back, okay, how can we play a different role in addressing some of the challenges from the companies?
So what did you do? I mean, that is we all want to know.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, there was one member in sourcing in Pakistan, have 40% I think of their total products were coming up there, working with a limited number of suppliers. They had considerable leverage, but they really felt, okay, we didn't address enough freedom of association and how workers, for instance, are being involved in the business locally as well. So we really had one-to-one with management and the CSR department discussions. Okay, what are the principles? What does it mean in your code of conduct as well, in your sourcing relationship? So we looked into those to adapt those. And then working also with their local agents and develop also a tool to assess on labor conditions at their main suppliers. So they did a big assessment. There was a lot of guidance on the job. So and it really strengthened them as well to go back to their supplier. This is what we found.
Yeah.
We got the help of a local union interviewing workers off-site as well, and to start a new conversation with their supplier as well. And that supplier wasn't always aware, so we started one-to-one and it became a triangle as well to commitment to have elected workers participation as there, and also really very specific address some of the wage issues as well.
So you looked actually not only at freedom of association, but you really looked at the due diligence steps and really guided like what is needed from the company side and what can we offer, or who else can we include to strengthen that.
No, definitely. I think the due diligence cycle. It's you always have to go back indeed to the other steps in the due diligence cycle as well. So you need to have a policy you can always relate back to. I think for business is important to their supplier. Okay, this is how we live up to it as well.
Yeah.
But then you really have to go up there to make it tangible. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Tamer, is there anything you would like to add to this discussion on what Ruben gave some examples of how they change a bit their way of working also within the corporation. Is there anything that you can share from your perspective from Solidaridad?
No, I agree with what Ruben said. I think in the end I think it turned out to be a win-win situation for both parties. I think we as civil society organizations cannot create any impact if we do it on our own. So we need collaboration with organizations, with companies. I think also the value was, I guess, the collaboration between the different parties. I think better connection with sector associations that eventually can set up, I guess, more systemic change or systemic different way of doing business. I think better connections with the trade unions and the other NGOs in the Dutch agreement. So I think in general it did help us. I think also maybe one other thing, we are often the companies that are taking a step further and working on impact on the ground are bigger companies, and they have a different way of working. They often have more capacity to work on impact on the ground, and that could be a manpower, that can be other sources or whatsoever. I think lots of companies within the Dutch agreement were SMEs, and SMEs have a different way of working. So I think it helped us to kind of put in perspective how we can better maybe tailor the way we work towards what SMEs kind of need, and to have a more custom-made approach. So I think it gave us insight, I think, in who and how the Dutch sector works, and how we can support also these smaller companies in doing their due diligence and create impact on the ground.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Tamer. And I think all of you have mentioned the importance of trust and collaboration. Tamer, if I can stay with you, could you just, what do you think were the key success factors for this collaboration between the parties? What happened? What made it possible? Yeah.
Well, I think we should not forget that it takes time. So I think what I said when I introduced myself is that within the Dutch fashion industry, collaboration goes way back. The Dutch agreement started in I think 2016, but even before that, there were lots of people already collaborating. So I think it has to do with trust, and trust is not happening overnight. That you need to build that. So I think trust is one important aspect. I think also the way that you negotiate a text and you have shared goals, or at least a shared vision towards creating impact or towards improving the industry. And I think the guidance really helped as well. But I think in general, you should be aware that it takes a lot of investment from all different parties. I think you asked somewhere, did it take a lot of time? I think everyone here around the table online, or who was involved with the Dutch agreement, knows that it took a lot of time, and sometimes was sometimes also a bit scary maybe to kind of come with your issues towards an NGO or a trade union. But eventually over time you build trust, and it's also how when companies see that the other organizations are investing, and the other way around, you can create, I think, a collaborative atmosphere.
Yeah, really nice. Marieke, I see you nodding. Is there anything you'd like to add to the elements that Tamer just mentioned for this successful collaboration? Or what were the elements, in your opinion, to the success also?
Yeah, no, it definitely, I think the trust that Tamar mentioned, and we already mentioned also here, is huge. That's so important. Even now, I mean, we reach out to each other. I mean, the agreement may have ended, but we still reach out to our stakeholders in case of an event, or they reach out to us if they encounter something in one of our factories or in another way. There could be something of value, and then we can sit down and discuss together how to approach this. And one of the things that I also, because Tamar mentioned those the tools and the things, that is one of the things that was really helpful for us as well. Is, for example, because we were part of the agreement, we were able to join a survey amongst our suppliers, and also our own colleagues. And I still use it today in presentations and in trainings. And
then just to clarify, that was a survey on buying practices, purchasing
exactly.
practices, to see how you are doing. Yeah. And your suppliers would rate you, and your colleagues would rate the
and you can benchmark it to what all the aggregated results from other companies as well. The answers. So that really gives you a first step in, okay, we're doing really well here, maybe, I don't know, maybe forecasting or policy, but we're not doing so well in another part of our purchasing practices. And purchasing practices, of course, is for a company something, I mean, that is what you do, that is what you're good at. So those are the first actions you can take yourselves. So even after, so what I'm saying, so those tools we still use, even after we joined a project with Solidaridad, also revolving purchasing practices, but also in cases of events in our supply chains, we reach out to each other.
Yeah, but then what I also hear you say, what is very important, is that you have data on a sector level that you can use to kind of define your actions. So this questionnaire was helpful. But I also heard you say earlier, like maybe the step-by-step approach. The agreement allowed for phasing in of transparency. The first year was only, you had to share your locations first year and then later deeper down the chain. So everyone was kind of guided step by step to make improvements.
I would like to add, I think a lot of sustainability efforts are done in projects from a beginning and an end. And I think the AGT, I think, is quite unique that it really was a commercial commitment as well. So I think that really also helped other colleagues working on CSR specifically to really make CSR on top of the business agenda as well, and really we've been doing a lot of training also with buying teams as well to really have a different look. So it's not only about prices, it's about not the tax and specs they are discussing as well, and delivery times, but it's also make around in the factory as well, have a look, have a couple of discussions with workers as well. Ask about overtime issues as well, ask for some evidence. So it really triggered, I think, also a different type of energy at the companies we have been working with as well.
You recognize that?
That
you have the longer term commitments and the top management commitments?
And you have, because it really is, it's a policy, it's a way of working, and that was introduced into the companies, and two things, so it went further than just our sustainability team, but included buyers and other, and top level, of course. And it just gives you a sort of, within the company also, we have to do this. Why? Because we're part of the AGT. And then,
and it's negotiated, and the top is responsible.
So you can move on. You can really just focus on
because the commitment was there from the start. And this is, I think, why also these negotiations for new agreements take time. We are currently in the process of looking at an agreement, right?
No, definitely. I mean, we've been, I think, discussing with the brands associations involvement of the brands, supported and involvement of the Sociaal-Economic Council as well, to have a follow-up, more focusing on impact. But I think there are also challenges, right? What is the government going to do in terms of national legislation? European legislation coming up, so it's bringing new dynamics, but I think the commitment of the stakeholders didn't change because of that.
No, and in the end, you talk about impact. I guess that's why we're all doing what we're doing. Maybe let's move to impact. I mean, it's not easy, right? We talked about a lot of time is needed to build trust, to cooperate, and in the end, it's great if we have good systems here, but in the end, it's about what's happening there. Well, Marieke, if I can start with you, what kind of changes did your company make on due diligence processes really to work towards that impact, or actually to achieve impact on the ground?
So within the AGT, we focused on workers' voice, and we joined projects on grievance mechanisms. With our suppliers, started focusing on responsible purchasing practices. And I just wanted to also come back to your last question, because yes, of course, we need to continue, but we are continuing. It's not because of the agreement that it was for 5 years that was the end of it, and now we wait. No. We continue, and we need to find a new form to contribute to that, a new type of agreement maybe, but we didn't stop.
No. It's not your due diligence process stops.
No.
And a lot of things were built
or even
within
projects.
Yeah, projects continue.
Yeah.
But how about the data in the supply chain that you got from your peers? That is something that you maybe...
Yeah, we were able to, you were able to see where other brands are also sourcing. That's maybe to where your leverage might be.
I mean, that was during the agreement, right? But now, so in between, like we're in between now, right? The AGT has ended. Yeah. Maybe a new agreement will come, and you say we're still doing a lot of the things that we started in the agreement. Luckily, haven't stopped, so that's great. Yeah. But some of the things you don't have because you don't have the agreement, right? Like the data of the recent data of your peers, for example, right?
Yeah. So you need that. Yeah.
Tamer, is that something, the information on how the companies are doing on an aggregated level, that was useful for your work as well?
I think in general it helps, I guess, to set the scene of the industry, of the sector, the Dutch sector. But I think what was a bit more helpful for us is that based out of this aggregated, I guess, information, the Secretariat was able to make the connection between us and the companies that had more, I guess, specific issues. I think we all know that there are, I think, these horrible human rights violations and our environmental issues in different regions around the world. I don't want to touch upon, I think, the very logic examples that we have, but I think with the aggregated level, I think we knew that this is, I think, these are the issues that we're facing, and the Secretariat could better pinpoint it towards groups of companies that was helpful for us to start impact projects with.
Yeah. Okay. Could you give an example of an impact project that you have done during the time of the agreements?
Yeah, well, I think one project that is actually still running is we have set up a project to reduce the environmental impact of the wet processing industry in Bangladesh with 4 companies. The idea is to work with Tier 2, mainly Tier 2, so laundries, dye houses, washing facilities, to reduce the environmental impact. And we started that project as it was set up during the Dutch agreement. Then COVID happened, so it was a little bit extended. But the project is, on the one hand, we do a risk assessment on wet processing, and we build capacity on environmental issues at red level. On the other hand, we do a proper baseline assessment at factory level, and then we work on improvement plans for the facilities themselves. So I think it's an approach from 2 different angles. On the one hand, you make sure that the systems are in place at brand level to eventually also replicate the project, and on the other hand, we also really help the factories to comply to existing assessments. So in this case, we worked with the facility environmental module of the SAC, for example, and then also help them to make improvements in these assessments so that they can also use that with the other brands that they're working with.
Yeah. Great. So that's a great example, and it's good to hear that it's still running even though the AGT has ended, and that what Marika was saying, that you still reach out to the NGOs that are offering specific projects on themes that are relevant for you. Ruben, can you give an example of a project that the FNV has been involved in that contributes to impact on the ground?
I think there were two topics, at least for us as FNV, that were very important. Freedom of association. It's all about, not a surprise, I suppose, right, and living wage. I think also with Tamar, we've been really working hard on doing a wage gap analysis tool. So that really gave insight, I think, also about the mismatch on statutory minimum wages in production countries and the actual cost of living. So that really revoked, I think, also an internal discussion. I think in year 4 of the AGT, we really found that freedom of association was hardly being addressed. So we really started to start a collective project. It was compulsory for all the participants. So we start working at country level. So we had a working group on Turkey, on China, on Bangladesh, India, Cambodia, and really trying to bring companies who were a major sourcing relationship in those countries around the table, and really ask them to open up. Okay, what are you doing? What do you know also from your data, often audits as well, about working conditions? About is there any workers' committee, for instance? Is there a trade union? And we found by exchanging this information there's actually quite a mismatch as well. So information that was not always correct, information that should have been there but wasn't. So that really revoked, I think, also the discussion. And
so you kind of instead of immediately saying you have to do a project on an impact project on freedom of association, you took a step back and you said, let's just first exchange what the knowledge is, where the need is from the companies to bring this topic further, because you tried things before, right? And so you kind of change your approach.
It's really, I think, for me, due diligence is that companies are in the driving seats. I mean, that's also for trade unions. I mean, we are part of the same supply chain. I mean, if business is doing well, it's often, hopefully also for work is doing well. So I think we're both connected to really invest in a sustainable business as well. So instead of, telling what needs to be done, let's see what's out there. And trying to see, okay, ideally how should it look like? Okay, and where do we start? So it's really, again, bringing back questions as well with examples on the ground. Okay, what is the situation? It's not really always flourishing, so what are we going to do? And now we started with 6 companies as well, Dutch companies as well in Bangladesh, on freedom of association based on, audit findings as well. There's room for improvement. And I think the commitment from the companies, including HEMA as well, is to really see, okay, how can we use Bangladesh as a case example also to scale up as well to ensure elected and functional workers' representation. So working with local resource organizations, with local teams on the ground. But also going back to policies and procedures, buying practices of the brands to see, okay, how are workers' issues embedded up there? Is FOA, is it really part of the sourcing dialogue? Yeah. So, really getting excited. So in 2 weeks' time we have a training of trainers. So,
That sounds really promising and good to hear. Thank you so much. I think if we look at impact, also alleged violations is also something that's very important in due diligence. That if something goes wrong, where can workers go? How can it be resolved? I know that you've worked on such a case in Turkey. Could you share a bit about what did you do, or how did you cooperate with others in this case? And can you share a bit, maybe how you change your approach? So previously, if you would receive an alleged violation.
We had a factory, a production location. So feel free to add if I'm missing out some information. But We had one of our factories supplying to more of the members of the AGT, so we were not the only one. And they stopped the business. They stopped the production for all of us, which obviously immediately could have, might not have, but could have an effect on the workers there. So what we did is first we had a meeting with those brands. So we reached out to each other. I think it was really fast. It was within a few days. We were in a joint call together to see, okay, what is the information that we have? What is our position at this factory? What do we
Without disclosing any commercial information,
Exactly, of course.
more
Thank
from a human rights perspective, like
Yeah.
what do we know about the workers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What have you heard? We all have different supply chains. Some of us maybe have people on the ground, we're colleagues on the ground, or agents. So we had our different channels of information and just pile it up and see what the story is. And then also try to reach out to other companies outside of the AGT. But I think what was most effective, or at least was most felt like more impact, was to have also the SER joining in and also facilitate contact with local union a representative to share their view. So within the due diligence process, of course, you are expected, and rightfully so, to also incorporate the local voice and representatives in these situations, and that is sometimes really difficult. I mean, who are these, and how do I reach out? And I'm a commercial company, so is there something? And I don't want to bypass my factory, or I want to include them. So that is really effective to have this network again.
And this local. Oh, sorry, you wanted to add?
I think a lot on HRDD is always being associated with risk mitigation. Of course, you want to prevent that. You want to have a perfect supply chain as well. But I think also with the AGT, and at least also our approach, is to really view also intervention in your supply chain as a business opportunity. Also see the win-win scenario. I don't like the word, but also see it as a business opportunity.
Yeah.
Showing also figures, if you look at freedom of association, where you have a trade union or at least a functionally elected workplace committee, for example. So migration rates are decreasing, sick leave are decreasing, workers staying longer term, productivity usually goes up again. So it's business opportunities, and that's always, I think, also important, right, to get suppliers on board as well. We can talk up here from a distance, but it's about suppliers and workers quite far away, and it's important to have them involved.
Good. Yeah,
and that really
that's what you did in this. Yeah. And did they bring a different perspective, the local union in that sense?
Yeah, always. It always brings a different perspective, I think.
Yeah.
No, just it taught us a lot about, for example, local legislation or local circumstances.
Yeah.
Maybe even economic drives, and the perspective from the workers themselves. What happened there? Where are they working? What is it? What type of facility is it from their perspective?
Yeah.
And I think also an important outcome there is some of these situations are very difficult, but the impact is also within the company ourselves. So we joined our buyers and did open up conversation with our buyers. What do you do in this type of situation? We do have protocols what we want to do in these type of situations. So they were involved again, and it's much like Ruben just said in the project that we've also joined. It's really twofold. So one is you directly go to the factory in this project, for example, but also in this situation, you go to the factory, you see what can I do there, and that's well, hopefully not one time, but it's a response to an immediate situation, but you're also immediately looking at, for example, now in the project, at our own purchasing practices. What can you do to prevent this type of situation as much as you can?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I'm looking where we're at the clock, and where we have to go a little bit to rounding up. If we go to the overarching question of this side session, like how can responsible business conduct agreements contribute to due diligence? Ruben, what do you think is the most important element? We've touched upon a lot of things, but if you would have to mention one thing, what would you say?
One thing, that's tough,
Okay,
right?
okay,
So,
okay. More than one is also allowed.
just a couple then. I think it's requiring openness as well. Don't be afraid, Hema, but so many others also who joined the Transparency Pledge. Open up. I mean, hey, we don't talk about commercial relationship, but we really, I think, about workers, about individuals as well. Also be transparent what your ambitions is, be focused what you want to get out, and also have a little bit of guts, right, to get there. Just as a business, you're an entrepreneur, so also when it's coming to social issues as well, I mean, start doing it, start small, don't be afraid and go for it.
Cool. Really nice. Tamer, Ruben says guts. I've heard you talk about guts before. Would you like to add or chip in?
Yeah. Maybe, so thanks, Ruben. That was a very good, I think, good summary. So what I would like to say, I guess, is I think we need to realize that sustainability is a journey. So I think it does take guts sometimes to take a step and to maybe be transparent about what you find in your supply chain. But eventually, I think the Dutch agreement or IRBC agreements are there to help companies to work towards more sustainability in their value chain. And I guess it doesn't happen overnight. So it's not like, oh, I do this risk analysis today and tomorrow I have everything solved. I think it being transparent about what you find and have guts to actually start working on maybe baby steps on impact is already helpful. And I think that could help you. And it can help you if you are vulnerable towards other organizations, because I think in the end, there are lots of issues in the supply chain that you cannot solve on your own. You need to kind of sometimes step up and start somewhere. Don't like over analyze the issues in your supply chain. Just start somewhere and build that out further in collaboration with others.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. Also, Tamer, I also saw Marieke nodding, so maybe she wants to add. But sometimes we spend a lot of time on analyzing what the exact situation is, and sometimes we don't know. And I think the agreement also create an environment where we can kind of test. And some things worked and some things didn't work, but then that's also useful, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to add? I mean, what do you think is the most significant contribution to what did the agreement bring to due diligence for you as a company?
Well, all of the above, but also start with the due diligence guidance and the research and the very practical approach that is already there, and then just step by step. And like Tamar is saying, just start.
Yeah, in collaboration with others.
Exactly, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Are there any last thoughts or ideas that you would like to share if we talk about negotiated sector agreements?
Well, I think as Tamar also pointed out, I mean, once you start a journey, embrace it also as a company as well. Don't be afraid to work with others. We're starting the OECD forum this week. I think it's also a place to engage with many others.
Yeah.
Keynote speech is given to one of our partners in Bangladesh. So I think we started something sustainable and are all ready to move forward and scale up. And I think it's important to be active listener as well. What's happening and.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Tamer. Any last thoughts from your side?
Well, maybe also like in lots of countries there are no IRBC agreements, so I think that should not stop companies for collaborating in their supply chain. So I think what we have done is set up this collaboration in a more kind of formal approach or formal structure, but there are other ways on how you can collaborate with organizations in your value chain. And I think the upcoming due diligence legislation will probably make that even more important. If you really want to create impact on the ground, you need to reach out to others. So I think for organizations that do not have the opportunity to join agreements like the AGT was, I think they should look for other ways of still making sure they join forces with others.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I mean, where there are agreements, definitely invite those companies to join, because together you're stronger. I think if we look at the main points that have been discussed in this last hour is the knowledge sharing between companies and civil society. That has been very important, but also the information that you get by working together as a sector, on the sector itself, on an aggregated level. If you can share data as a company to a trusted independent party, in this sense, the SARE, and you can use that information to see, okay, where can we really make a difference and start working on impact. I think that's very important. We've also talked about the tools, the creation of tools that both the unions and the NGOs have developed and that have been useful for the companies that are still being used. But that's also something that's continuous. I mean, you mentioned the example of the wage gap analysis, where you put in a lot of work that helps companies to create awareness. But that's not a static thing that needs to be developed. And I think collaboration, continuous collaboration is important in that sense. And I think, the thing that was key in this whole discussion was the trust-based environment. In the end, it's about people. It's about people we work with, and it's about people in the supply chain. And I think a sectoral cooperation allows for that. The SARE is currently still working towards a new sector agreement. Discussions are going on right now. Also in other sectors, there is already a natural stone agreement. There's also an agreement in the wind energy sector. Let's hope that for garments and textiles, we can also establish a new one and on a new European level as well. If you want to learn more about these efforts, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us, Marika, Ruben, and Tamer. And thank you at home for joining us online. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you next week in Paris, or this week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.